Hello, dwellers of the internet. I am Platt Skull, and right now I've got some minor analytics and first impressions of the Destiny 2 beta. First off, I'm going to take us through the Dawnblade subclass, just a quick little rundown of what I think of it and how I think it can be applied to different scenarios, and my overall impressions of it. I may go through a couple of different videos like these in the next couple days about the Destiny beta, considering I spent all of early access just playing the game and getting used to everything and feeling out the sort of combat style, the variabilities between different classes, subclasses, PvE and PvP and whatnot. Now I'm just going to give you a bunch of my random ass impressions and how I feel about each element, starting with Dawnblade right now. First off, I noticed upon starting the game and activating my main character Warlock that they give you Dawnblade initially. That is the main subclass that you start with, which is interesting. They just want to hop right into the exposure to the new subclasses of Destiny 2, which I like. Because you were able to experience some new content right off the bat during the beta, and considering how much of the game content is locked off to us right now, not bad to start off with these new abilities and finding out how they work out in-game. One thing I did notice upon starting up the game is that you don't have access to the Taken King subclasses. Nothing from that is available right off the bat. You don't have access to Stormcaller, Sunbreaker, or Night Stalker. I believe that's because Bungie has the intention to revamp these subclasses in such a way that their modifications would be a little bit more unique to the subclasses. They want to save that for the actual game. I'm not sure whether or not that makes a statement on their overall relevance to the importance of things that they left in the beta and things that they decided to put off until the actual game's release. I just think they sort of came to an agreement on what they would and what they wouldn't put in the beta to allow players to access. Not saying that one element is more important than the other, but that just happens to be one of the things that we are locked off to at this point, which is our Taken King subclasses. So it will be interesting to see what those can do when the game releases. As for Dawnblade, experiencing fighting in PvE with it was very cool. Experiencing the subclass in general was cool. Fighting in PvE was awesome. What the Dawnblade is more meant for, what the tactical advantages of it are that you could either focus on one or two big main major targets that would be yellow barred in health and have a lot more shield and a lot more attack power from the air, is that you not only have the aerial advantage over them while you're constantly in motion, but while firing off all of your Dawnblade strikes at them, you can almost guarantee that you will take one or two of them out, depending on how much health they do have or what classification of enemy they are. There are some enemies with a little bit more extensive health bars that go a bit beyond what you would expect, but you can either do that with that ability, or you can focus on a wave of smaller adds that is coming towards you of any kind. The Cabal that are red bar, any of the Vex that are red bar, Fallen, whatever class they may be, if they come at you and there's a group of them, you can target this group with one swing per enemy, and it will usually kill them with one strike each. If not, you may get lucky and kill two with one strike, depending on how closely together they're grouped up. Alternatively, if you are not the best aimer and not the best flying striker for this subclass, you may miss a couple of shots. Not the end of the world if you do, because there are plenty. They're pretty plentiful when you're up there exhausting your super. You have enough to where if you want a priority target dead, it will die from this ability. But that goes without saying that if you can land every shot, it would be a lot more advantageous to you in clearing out a multitude of adds even further, or doing that much more damage to a major target. The Dawnblade's super ability in PvP can range from extremely effective to not effective at all, depending on your variable situational circumstance that you decide to activate this super during. If you are a stealthy player and you manage to get the element of surprise and jump on the enemy, which I found is a lot more preferable when trying to gain the advantage with this super ability, then you may get a substantial amount of kills with it, 2 to 3, perhaps a team wipe, depending on how many of them are collectively together and how many of them are unaware of you activating the super when you do, which is awesome. In this situation, it usually results in your advantage. It results in some kills. You can basically automatically kill anyone in a 1v1 situation. In a 2v1 or 3v1, or facing the entire team, this is where the element of surprise can be helpful, where you can take 1, maybe 2 people out if they are unaware of your presence for an extended period of time while you are already taking advantage of their eliminated lives. If not, and they already have an awareness of you, if they already have a bullet and their sights trained on you, for example, you may have a chance to get a shot off before you are killed from being made a target in the air, which can be a disadvantage, obviously, of this subclass's super. You don't have to be in air when using it, but it is meant to be an aerial attack subclass, which is why this disadvantage to it exists, because this is where its disadvantages and advantages both manifest. During this scenario, if you are able to get at least 1 strike off before you die, you have a chance to kill the person who has their sights aimed on you already, which would then continue to give you the advantage. But in a situation where you have 2 or more people with their sights trained on you, when you activate this super or make yourself a target in air, it is very likely that you won't even have a chance to get a strike off. And even if you do have a chance to get a strike off, if you miss and do not eliminate your target immediately, you're most likely going to die within the next 1 or 2 seconds, which is where the disadvantages of this subclass super become apparent. But regardless, I still had fun with it. I enjoyed playing with it a bunch in the Crucible. I surprised many teams with it. It became apparent after getting shot down with it a few times that the super has its disadvantages as well as advantages, and that's just part of the learning process and how to utilize such a super. It's pretty awesome, I would say, given the right circumstances. I have gotten a team wipe with it. It's fairly easy to do so, depending on their location are relevant to you on the map. Super fun. Still good in PvP as well as PvE. Dawnblade is definitely going to come in handy. In terms of effectiveness, I would have to say that it's a little bit of a risky super in PvE as well as PvP. If you can make all of your shots count and get a kill / high damage on whatever enemy you happen to be facing at the time, it is advantageous. It's super beneficial to your team because it's able to take chunks of health away from bosses and enemies that are extremely necessary in beating them in PvE. And in PvP, it's in near perfect standing. I couldn't imagine too many tweaks that could be done to it that would improve it much as far as what it's able to do and its functionality in the game. And not to say that it can't be improved, because all supers can and what have you, but as far as the experience that I have had with it up until this point, I can say that I have learned the benefits and drawbacks to it inside and out, and it is definitely a functional and awesome super to be utilized in the game. When you use it, you feel super, which is the utmost important element of a super, I would have to say. So PvP, perfect. PvE, feels a little bit less effective on a boss, perhaps. Other enemies, any enemy really besides a boss, just fine. But every single super has this issue where they don't feel quite as effective against a bullet sponge boss or a high damage absorbing target, like a main boss of a strike or perhaps a raid, when that occurs. But in every other scenario, it functions perfectly. Awesome super. Can't wait to see how it's tweaked or how it's modified, or what the final product is going to be in the game with it. Super cool, super awesome. Let's continue with this. As far as reasoning goes for the replacement of the Sunsinger subclass, I feel that I totally understand it. The Sunsinger's super was a Radiance which had a lot of bonus effects to it. What it was a super that had a lot of stat boosts. It was sort of like a multi-buff super, but it didn't make you feel super. All it did was give you the ability to spam abilities and to feel a little bit stronger for a while in whatever scenario that it put you in, but without any actual super effectiveness that was high damage or highly noticeable or anything like that. In correcting this with Dawnblade works well because it gives you something that makes you feel super. It gives you something to cast repeatedly, something to strike with repeatedly, that can add up to a large amount of damage depending on your skill. It gives you something similar to the Boltcaster sword from Destiny 1's ability in terms of visuals and the functionality of it, where you would strike and have it launch in a particular direction and it would harm a target. Very cool, very effective, like I said before. And it replacing Sunsinger with Dawnblade also fixes the issue of the self-res ability, which was utilized by most Sunsingers who would take that subclass as a main for a raid or any other circumstance. The issue being that coming back to life from the grave could cheat too many situations that should have been a if you die you don't come back to life situation during Destiny 1. Things like raid battles, hard mode raids in general, because once you die it was restricted for any player to come back to life except for if you were a self-res warlock. So in a certain sense it was a sort of cheat/cheese situation when they would utilize such an ability. Not to say that Bungie didn't mean for this to be the case in the first place, but I feel after enough years of experience and enough of dealing with it as a mechanic in-game and looking at it from that perspective and seeing how many issues that could potentially create, I think the decision to remove that aspect of the subclass and to add an actual high damage super ability to it rather than the ability to come back to life is going to be a lot more balanced and a lot more functional in the future going forward. So I'm looking on that with positivity, I would say. This subclass is good. Anyways, that's it for the minor analytics / first impressions of the Dawnblade subclass. Next up is probably going to be in order of favoritism of class of character, which is going to be the Titan, and I'm going to be doing a small sort of same style video on the first impressions of the new Captain America themed subclass, the new Void one to replace the Defender subclass, which is called Sentinel, and that one, just looking at it, you know, Captain America, he's awesome. He's a guy with a shield, and you take the shield and you throw it, and when you throw it, it does damage, and it's like, it bounces off of shit, and it's awesome. Alright, we'll get there. I'll get to that in the next video. I'll see you then, guys. Platt Skull out.